Yo guys, what's up? There are exactly two things in this room that prove that I'm in China, that I'm not recording this video in Ireland or something. One is that I got the dojang. This is powdered soy milk, and I had to ask them at the shop, does it contain milk powder, and does it contain powdered eggs? Try to make sure your goddamn, even soy milk can be non-vegan around here. When I was in Thailand, they had soy milk, no kidding, that contained fish meat. Fish in the soy milk. I'm not joking. It's a whole other story. And the other piece of evidence that I'm currently in China and nowhere else in the world is that I bought this t-shirt today. And this is size extra large. Skin tight on me. Extra large. Anyway, sorry, I'm coughing, guys. The reason why I have not had a contribution to the Q&A earlier is that I have been really sick. And you can still see it in my face. I still look a bit puffy and out of it. I've been falling asleep at strange times of the day, just like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I just pass out. Fever, illness, coughing. I thought this would be a trivial illness, but it has not been. I've been really, really sick. But still, I've been trying to bring some quality content for you guys. Well, I've been over here in China, keeping my head above water. So look, this is the start of what's going to be many, many parts, answering your questions. I do take all the questions sent into the Q&A seriously. I will not answer each and every one, because that's humanly impossible, but I will read each and every one. And where one person has asked 4 questions, I'm definitely going to answer 1 out of the 4. Quit line jumping, you line jumpers. Come on. It's a Q&A. You're asking me 4 and 6 questions. Come on. What do you think? Come on. So, all right. First question. This video I'm going to answer 2. Just try to keep your Sunday a bit lively, if it is Sunday in your time zone, when you happen to see this or hear this. First question I'm going to answer is from Alice D. I'm treating people just slightly anonymously. I'm just saying Alice D. She actually does give her full last name. She is asking, what led to your desire to help people and make the world a better place? Based on the way you come across in your videos, it seems like a wearying pursuit, etc., etc. Okay, look, so this relates to several different themes in my life, in whatever. In all this stuff I talk about on YouTube, veganism, politics, humanitarian work. Why do I say so often that I'm not a nice guy? You know, it's so easy to tell a story. It's so easy to make yourself out to be a saint or a martyr. It's so easy to glorify, misrepresent the motivations that really drive you into humanitarian work and the humanitarian side of politics, of being involved in politics and trying to make the world a better place, which, you know, I have been. It's been a big part of my life. Something I've always really tried to be honest with myself about and honest with others about was precisely the extent to which those things involve some quite negative motivations. So yes, humanitarian work, it is about saving the world. It's about helping human beings. It's about making the world a better place, whether it's feeding starving people in famine-afflicted areas of Laos, or dealing with the consequences of the Cambodian Civil War, or First Nations within Canada, or any of the other things I've cared about. I mean, I cared about First Nations passionately since I was a kid. Really, since I was a child. That's bothered me. It's been a fissure in the illusion that Canadian civilization is something morally positive and good that we should all be a part of and we should all be applauding. But are those motivations entirely positive? No, they're not. So to give an example, again, from childhood forward, from early childhood, part of what made me want to be involved with humanitarian work was a sense of contempt for the civilization I was born into, a sense of contempt for the culture I was raised in. Now, I was born and raised in Canada, as you may have heard. My culture, my civilization, didn't build the pyramids, you know. Maybe it would be different if I was born and raised in Egypt and I really felt a profound sense of belonging and of indebtedness to the grandeur, the greatness, the accomplishments of my ancestors who built the pyramids. I can imagine that being very different for some people. Maybe it would even be different if I had been born and raised in a Buddhist culture where there were other virtues in the civilization. But I was born in a civilization, in a culture, in a time that rang so hollow to me, where all the justifications for what the government was doing, what it was, for why my country even existed, were incredibly hollow and morally repugnant to me. And again, the history of colonization, the history of the British Empire, the history of genocide against the indigenous peoples, and where that was was a huge component of that. That vitiated the myth of Canada for me growing up. Now, those were not the only factors. I could list a whole bunch of things about Canada that I really disliked as a child, and then things that I disliked as a teenager, and things that I disliked as an adult. But it was fundamentally very hard for me to accept the culture that I was born into. Now, you could respond to that in a bunch of different ways. You could respond to that by getting involved in organized crime or becoming antisocial in a number of different ways. And it is strange, well, not strange. In my case, I respond to that by really developing my kind of humanitarian instincts. Now, another route I could have taken, I think, would have been to become an artist, to see myself as being in a state of rebellion and trying to make the world a better place through art. But you guys already know from my character, that never could have worked for me. And I was involved in the arts, and certainly that's something my parents would have encouraged much more than any of the things that I did end up being passionate about. And it's this thing, you hear me say all the time, keeping it real. To me, the idea that you actually literally paint a painting, you create a painting, and think you're making the world a better place, to me that is never going to be as real as going to a farm and talking to the farmers and doing research on agriculture and actually handing out sacks of rice to people who otherwise would starve or be lacking. To me, there's no comparison. Making a painting or a play, a work of performance art, or writing a piece of music about a war, like the current war in Afghanistan, or the civil war in Cambodia, or the civil war in Sri Lanka, to me, that can never be as real as actually doing the research and of actually trying to get involved and make a positive difference. Even if that difference you make is tiny, because it's direct and it's real. So for me, going and trying to volunteer, for example, at refugee camps on the border between Thailand and Myanmar. This is years ago when those refugee camps were really booming. Now, so this reflects my sense of what's real and what have you. But as I say, I've always tried to be honest with myself and others, but that's something I've talked about in contrasting myself to Christian missionaries. Christian missionaries tend to really need to have the delusion that the people they're helping are angels, that they're helping people who are morally good. And I've always said, no, that's not the point. You help people because they need help and because helping them is the right thing to do. You can go to Cambodia and have a charity that helps people, and the people you're helping may be scumbags. Like they're starving, they're poor, and they're war criminals. The war just ended. They just finished massacring people, but they need help. Now you have to think about, seriously, is this the right thing to do? But you can't go in there. Even whatever, northern Laos, the farmers, the typical guy who runs a farm. Is he a nice guy? Is he an angel? Is he morally good? Is he pure of heart because he needs your help? No. So again, my mix of instincts and motivations and where that came from as a child, it's not entirely positive, and it's definitely not the kind of stereotype we have coming out of Western Christian culture. So that's why I'm always saying that I'm not a nice guy. I'm always saying that there's kind of more to it. And it probably is for most people. If you can, when I was in a place like Laos and Thailand, a lot of the guys doing humanitarian work were homosexuals, and one of their reasons for doing humanitarian work in that part of the world was that they didn't want to be in a homophobic culture anymore. They grew up somewhere in the Western world and they got sick of it, and they were trying to have a career that let them live in Thailand or Laos or what have you, to be in a culture that was not homophobic and where they could openly be themselves and so on. Totally sympathetic, totally understandable, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the humanitarian work. It has to do with the kind of lifestyle they wanted to live. So I guess that's enough of an answer to this question from Alice. The second question, I actually do not have the name of the person who posed the question here, but someone wrote in and asked, how would I feel if my own daughter grew up to eat meat, if my own daughter is not vegan? And to me, this is an interesting question coming at this time, because my thoughts and feelings about this changed when I was in Chiang Mai, just in the last couple of weeks. If I had answered this question before the trip to Chiang Mai, I would have told you the following narrative. So I'm foreshadowing, my thoughts on this have changed. I would have told you a story, that's a true story, about a Hindu man, and I only found out about him because one of his daughters became a successful actress, successful TV personality. And this daughter, in interviews, had revealed that, her father was a traditional Hindu vegetarian, and he took vegetarianism very seriously. And the minute she started eating meat, which I think was when she was in university, so when she had some independence from her family, she started eating meat. From the minute she started eating meat, he basically didn't talk to her, very simple, keeping in touch, but the personal relationship was over, And then he never supported her career as an actress or what have you, and he was just very harsh towards her. And eventually, this actress, she was successful enough that she did commercials for restaurants that serve meat, for like fast food restaurants, which, I'm sure only made his feelings towards her even harsher. And my complete coincidence, I happened to read an interview with this actress, and she said that her sister, she had a younger sister by contrast, and he had always been so warm and so loving to this younger sister, and he had supported her in her career she also wanted to be an actress. He had 2 daughters who were both basically good looking and wanted to be actresses. And so she always felt the burn of this contrast between the way the younger daughter was treated and the older daughter was treated. I'm reading this, and it's like, it's not trivial that you decided to start eating meat. Like, if you're in a Christian family and you convert to Satanism, Satanism is still based on the same Bible. You're cheering for the other side, but you still actually believe in the same God and the same cosmology and the same world system. It may sound bizarre, but actually for a Christian family to accept a Satanist kid, not that difficult conceptually. But you are literally killing and eating cows on a daily basis, and your father is a traditional Hindu vegetarian, which doubtless includes some ethical aspects and some supernatural aspects, some religious aspects, and some just traditionalism. But you're betraying and insulting your family and hurting your father's feelings on a daily basis in a way that's really real. It doesn't just have to do with belief or behavior. So when I read that, obviously the interview was written entirely from the actress's perspective, but I thought, what are you thinking? There's another side to this story. And not only are the father's feelings real, but, the impacts for the cows are real, the impacts for ecology are real. But, this is something that actually does harm, which is, again, it's very different. I would not be happy if my daughter started smoking cigarettes, but, the cigarettes would be harming her. When you're eating meat, you're harming yourself, and you're harming the cows, and you're harming the world. So, in the past, I would have related this, and I would have again talked about the fact that I'm not a nice guy, and I would have had a reflection of that, and I would have said, probably even though I'm not religious, probably like that Hindu parent, that Hindu father, I would have a somewhat extreme, negative reaction like that, and I probably would be a jerk about it. Okay, that was before Chiang Mai. In Chiang Mai, I got to see for myself people totally disillusioned with, totally emotionally devastated by the conduct of their fellow vegans. And at that time, before reading this question, I reflected just independently. I thought, what, this changes the way I feel about that scenario. Like, what if my daughter starts eating meat? And it changes it because I can now imagine completely that just being disillusioned with the people who are vegans, not being disillusioned with veganism, but being disillusioned with the reality of vegans themselves, really could be enough for my daughter to quit being vegan. And I was seeing that in Chiang Mai. I was seeing the impact it had. And I have to confess that that's, of course, quite closely parallel to my experience with Buddhism. Who Buddhists are in the 21st century, I had to look at who those people were and realize I can't work with these people, and this is not the religion for me, not because of the details of the philosophy, not because of the type of textual study that I engaged in. Not like one day, I was reading a Pali manuscript and I discovered, a different aspect of the Buddhist philosophy that I didn't know before, and I thought, no. Not for the textual aspect, not for the historical aspect, not for the political aspect. It's for the human reality of who Buddhists are in the 21st century, what the religion is on the human scale, who these people are, what's possible and impossible because of who they are. And, this is simplifying. I've had longer videos talking about my experience with Buddhism, and I had to walk away from Buddhism. But with veganism, it is even more dynamic than that, because you are limiting your life by being vegan socially, in terms of the people, in terms of the human element. You are. You can kid yourself about it, but you are. Different people when I was in Chiang Mai joked with me because of the accusations from during my different people joke with me. Oh well, you're gonna, you're here to find a vegan girlfriend or something. And I remember saying, look, if I was trying to find a girlfriend, the number one thing is don't be vegan, or don't mention that you're vegan. The number two thing is, pretend you drink alcohol. So you guys probably know I'm vegan. I also don't drink alcohol. I don't use any other mind-altering drugs. The reality is, if you just want to meet people for romance or friendship or social networking, the vast majority of those people are going to be meat eaters. And the actual social context for meeting them, for making those connections, in 2016 is dominated by meat and alcohol. That's where people meet. That's how they meet. Alcohol as creating the whole atmosphere of relaxed social interaction and so on. So, when you cut yourself off from that, is definitely in Canada, definitely in England, definitely in Germany, in many, many, many cultures, but even in Thailand, you're massively reducing the spectrum of people who can be part of your life and the type of life you lead and who you can interact with. So yes, I can actually now deeply sympathize with the reasons my daughter might have for either becoming non-vegan or for, pretending to eat meat and, to be more of a mainstream member of normal society in that way, just so that she doesn't have to live in an intellectual ghetto, so she doesn't have to live in this narrow spectrum of her fellow human beings. And I mean, like I say, in Chiang Mai, I was surrounded by people who just had their minds blown, who were so disappointed and disconsolate because they were having to see the ugly reality of who their fellow vegans were. And look, guys, now that I have the comment section open in YouTube, you can have that experience on a daily basis. You can take a look in the YouTube comment section, and you have all these people who are avowedly ethical vegans, and there is apparently absolutely nothing else in their lives that's ethical. And we got to take that seriously. So yeah, my thoughts and my feelings on that have changed. But for me personally, I'm not tempted to stop being vegan. I do not mind living a life where I have a narrow but deep section of the population I interact with. But of course, I'm a fully grown adult. I'm not a teenager. I'm not a child. So it's very different for me than it would be for my daughter growing up. For me, there's no temptation to get involved with meat or alcohol or even the broader constituency, the broader part of the world's population I can interact with. But that's me. And as I've said so many times, even in this first set of answers to the Q&A, I'm not a nice guy. In a lot of ways, the type of lifestyle I've been yearning for since my early teenage years or late child years has been a pretty monastic, focused, disciplined lifestyle. And here at this language school, I really have that. It's a strange irony, but my situation in this language school, I'm going to try to make some videos to show you, in some ways this is more monastic than being in a Buddhist monastery, and I have stayed in enough Buddhist monasteries to have an opinion. And it's more monastic than being in the Canadian military, and I did sign up to join the military, so I could be on a base right now, but I'm not. Of living a kind of focused, simple life in every way, in terms of food, study, scholarship, self-discipline. So that's also been an aspect of my character, and in some ways I was seeking that out in humanitarian work and wanting to be in that tent, in that village where people needed sacks of rice handed out of them, and in some ways I was seeking it out through Buddhist scholarship, and in some ways I've been seeking it out in all the different things that are part of my life. So that was just 2 questions, barely under 20 minutes long.